Coming up tonight on The Recovery.
We have to accept the blame. Manager or the island administrator get his managers to open his shelters.
NEMA shoulders responsibility for the breakdown during Hurricane Joaquin. This while the Met Office says they did their job.
They were disseminated in a timely manner. Now, whether they were caught off guard or whether they were, I'm not certain.
All this while many Bahamians tonight are still struggling to make it. The Bahamas tonight's continuing coverage of the recovery in the aftermath of Hurricane Joaquin starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
NEMA accepting responsibility for broken protocols and getting storm shelters open, leaving thousands at risk. Good evening, everyone. I'm Charisma Robinson.
And I'm Chris Saunders. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, while the debate continues as to who bears the responsibility for lack of notification and preparedness, we're also learning that some of the established protocols to safeguard residents from these breaches were actually broken or not even followed. Here's Clint Watson.
We have to accept the blame that the manager or the island administrator get his managers to open his shelters. We have to accept it here.
NEMA's Director Captain Stephen Russell taking responsibility for protocols not having been followed ahead of Hurricane Joaquin devastation on the central and southeastern islands. However, not mincing words this time when it comes to addressing deficiencies that occurred either ahead of or during the storm, he made it clear that shelters were not opened in many of those storm-ravaged islands. Based on charted information at the command center, out of 5 shelters in San Salvador, 3 opened. In Rumkey, the single shelter opened but was compromised, forcing residents to move to the clinic. Long Island had only 1 of the 10 shelters opened. Crooked Island only opened 2 of the 7 shelters, both of which were compromised during the storm. But in Acklands, none of the 6 shelters were opened.
Instructions were not given by the administrator to activate his shelters to his committee members. That's what we're gathering. We now have to go back and meet with the administrator and his team. Why is it that your shelters, upon instructions, were not open to receive your people?
And while NEMA may accept the blame, he is not accepting the explanation that sufficient time nor notice wasn't given.
On Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., we partially activate our operations center here. And by noon, we were having announcements out to all administrators in the islands to prepare their shelters for opening, I think it's 6 p.m. for that afternoon.
So everybody had adequate warning?
Yes, adequate warning.
As far as communications failing, Captain Russell says NEMA's communication arm is made up of most of the major networks that are responsible for communication, and if it fails, it's a combination of factors that must be considered.
So between the police, BC, the defense force, wherever they are and when they are in those areas, and those 3 units, they form our communications subcommittee in all of our islands. When the defense force are deployed, if their men go with additional communications assets, they are another 4th unit in that communication hub. And we try to ensure that all of our island administrators have a satellite phone. So between the 5 of those units or agencies in a respected area, we seek to ensure that through one of them we can get some information in or out of the disaster-stricken area.
Captain Russell also says they've created a WhatsApp group with all relevant personnel on all family islands, and they use it to issue all alerts, watches, and warnings. In fact, the Department of Meteorology is holding firm to its position that it dealt with notification properly. Senior Deputy Director Trevor Baisden defended his unit against criticism that they dropped the ball.
They were disseminated in a timely manner. Now, whether they were caught off guard or whether they hurt, I'm not certain, but for certain from my office, we held our responsibility and performed it to the necessary maximum.
Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
With only 1 of the 10 hurricane shelters on Long Island open during the storm, the island administrator says they are taking a closer look at how to correct that problem.
As Betty Thompson-Moss tells us this evening, officials were forced to spring into action even during extreme conditions.
For hours, the ferocious winds roared over Long Island, which was being hit from all directions by the Category 4 hurricane. The rising water climbed, streets became impassable. In homes, residents were frantic. In Clarence Town, the capital, Island Administrator Therese Bootle received calls from persons in distress. Like in other communities, Long Island, with a population of about 3,000, also had its challenges with hurricane shelters.
We are continuously evaluating what are our best options because we rely on churches, public facilities to say to us, we'll make this available for shelter. In an ideal world, we would have a shelter in each community that meet expectation as hurricane shutters, but we don't have that.
Despite the challenges and with outside help, residents are determined to rebuild their communities.
There is a buzz of activities with supplies landing, trucking, and the movement of people and families getting to either get their relatives out to make it a lot easier, young and children, elderly, flights coming in and out, boats coming in and out, seaplanes coming in and out. We're grateful to those associations, the Member of Parliament, the Long Island Association, the Rotaries, and those are Red Cross, those organizations. I am working on behalf of NEMA. NEMA landed to the British Navy fleet, and they were able to accomplish some of our goals.
And for now, residents in Long Island are trying to sustain a level of recovery as they track their way through the impact of the hurricane. Betty Thompson-Moss, ZNS Network News.
The Department of Health is a critical agency before, during, and after a storm.
In a post-evaluation of their health plan following Hurricane Joaquin, officials are expressing extreme satisfaction with the overall performance.
In fact, health executives spoke exclusively with ZNS News today. Here's Carla Palmer.
Minister of Health, the Honorable Dr. Perry Gomez, says it was meticulous planning and a highly skilled team of nurses and doctors that aided in their overall health plan being meted out with success.
Potable drinking water and safety and proper accommodation for healthcare workers, sanitation and proper hygiene, current medication and refrigeration for perishable supplies, the restoration of utilities and safe use of water, and the rotation of working teams and establishment of communication was the first orders of priority.
Minister Gomez also confirmed that 2 of 14 clinics throughout the affected islands were severely damaged and are closed as a result of the storm. One in Clarence Town, Long Island, and the other on Crooked Island. Administrator of Community Clinics, Nurse Charlene Bain, notes the immediate accommodations in the interim.
The Clarence Town Clinic roof was destroyed. However, we have been able to relocate clinic services to the Clarence Town Community Health Center. And so the people have not been denied access to healthcare services. In regards to the Cornell Hill Crooked Island Clinic, that clinic received extensive damage, and we have been in contact with the National Insurance Board to utilize their local office in Cornell Hill Crooked Island.
With health professionals resident on each of those family islands, Chief Medical Officer at the Princess Margaret Hospital, Dr. Glenn Benaby, says in addition to them being physically displaced, they are emotionally scarred.
Many of them have lost their home. They are part of the community. And in addition, they need, along with the other members of the community, psychological support as well, which is being organized with our team here.
Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Mr. Marco Roll, added that those health employees impacted are being cared for.
We are contemplating how best to assist further with respect to housing accommodations, but we have not yet arrived at a determination on the best way forward with respect to that.
Health officials anticipate a long-term recovery and maintain they will meet any future challenge. Carla Palmer, ZNS Network News.
With many schools damaged in the wake of Hurricane Joaquin, hundreds of students affected will now continue their education in different surroundings.
The Ministry of Education is advising parents to ensure that their children continue their education, and the ministry will do its utmost to assist those who have relocated. Vaughn Aubrey reports.
The Minister of Education, the Honorable Jerome Fitzgerald, giving ZNS News a breakdown of the number of schools impacted by Hurricane Joaquin in the southeast Bahamas.
In Auckland, we have probably one school that has been severely damaged, one that hasn't had any impact, and another one that has minor impact. In Crooked Island, we have two schools there that have had major damages. Rumkey, where we were building the school there, so that structure really didn't have any damage at all to it. The church where the kids are being housed, that's fine, that's ready to go. San Salvador, both the primary school and the senior high school received significant damages.
Minister Fitzgerald estimates that the cost to repair and rebuild is around $1 million. With significant damage in Acklins and Crooked Island, he talked about the number of students affected there.
In total, you're probably talking around 300 throughout all of the islands. Of that, really only, I would say 2 or 3 schools between Acklins and San Salvador have been impacted severely, and you're probably talking about in total, I'd say probably about maybe 40 to 50 students, in that range.
And many of those students have left their island settlements.
Many of them already in New Providence, and we're encouraging the parents to send those students here. We have facilitated them going to and enrolling in new schools and with uniforms and so forth. But the time period will vary. We think probably between a month for those that are not that much impacted, up to 2 or 3 months for the ones that have a little bit more roof damage. And so we're expecting by the end of this year that we should have all of the schools operational.
Regarding South Long Island, Minister Fitzgerald says they're working closely with Long Islanders to get their communities up and running. I'm Vaughn Aubrey, ZNS Network News.
Sometimes you just think about it, the things we take for granted, only when they're gone do we realize it. And Long Islanders probably won't forget the value of telephones after doing without them for almost a week.
Yesterday, Keisha Adley talked with the BTC manager just after telecommunications were restored.
The first phone calls in 6 days are now coming through to Deadman's Key in Long Island following the devastation of Hurricane Joaquin. I'm joined by BTC Senior Manager Ian Knowles, who is, you're not in uniform today because you're pretty busy. Tell me about what it took to bring the phone service up.
It's a team effort from the team in Nassau and the local technicians here. We've been working from the storm, after the storm on Sunday. There's a lot of fiber damage between Deadman's Key and Clarence Island. We was working throughout the day and all night for the last several days, and finally last night we got the connection back up.
Okay, tell me who's up and at what level they are.
Right now we have in Deadman's Key, the LTE is up, and we have 2 internet lines where the customers using Wi-Fi for WhatsApp, and we also have 2 Vibe lines where people can make calls and receive calls on.
Right. Now, a second ago, I think you were able to make contact with NASA. Let's give that a try. Because obviously for the last several days, we haven't, I know you here in Long Island, haven't been able to make contact with Nassau, and that was one of the scariest experiences for your relatives there. So finally good to know that you can make contact with Nassau, tell everyone you're all right, and of course continue to appeal for the aid that you're going to need for several more days here. We're trying to make contact now with Clem Roll. He's in Nassau on his way to Long Island.
Clem. Yeah, what are you saying?
And we hear Clem coming through on the call, one of the first calls coming into Long Island. Such a relief for Long Islanders. Clem, you're on ZNS News now, calling to establish contact with New Providence, one of the first calls out of Deadman's Key since the hurricane. And you told us you were on the way here. All right. Thanks a lot, Clem.
Okay, Clem.
So there you have it. After 6 exhausting days, I know, Ian, the power, at least the communication supply being restored to Long Island. From Deadman's Key, I'm Keishla Adderley.